Good evening, everyone. Before I begin, I would like to thank ISOLA Maharashtra chapter for arranging this event and giving me the opportunity to share the dais with such eminent landscape architects. So today I'm going to present a summary of one of my research works which looks at the impacts of transport infrastructure projects on ecologically sensitive sites in urban areas. The findings of the research leads to a design intervention which is demonstrated by a pilot project as a case example on how a transport terminal project can be integrated responsibly with fragile landscapes. The research looks at the historical evolution where transport infrastructure became less dependent on the landscape features with advancement of technology, the subsequent environmental hazards created by such projects, and resulting environmentally conscious approach to transport projects. The study then investigates the direct and indirect impacts of transport terminals on urban landscapes, especially in the context of Navi Mumbai. And the research questions the typical notion of development and tries to give a fresh perspective on transport terminal projects integrated with fragile landscapes. So in ancient times, transport infrastructure was largely dependent on natural features of the landscape like land formations, oceanic gyres, wind patterns, that governed maritime trade routes. Similarly, topography and landforms dictated overland trade routes. For example, the ridgeways of England and the Silk Route, etc. Early innovations in technology like construction of paved roads and bridges during Roman civilization and invention of the steam engine and construction of tunnels during industrialization helped overcome these natural barriers of the landscape. Mechanization and standardization in designs brought about disregard for the natural environment, like the American interstate highways. Construction of intercontinental canals overcame limitations put up by geographical features and reduced travel distance and time. The jet engine and aviation industry broke all landscape barriers and redefined transportation completely. However, such technological endeavors also ended up negatively impacting the ecology and the environment. In 1960s, with increasing environmental awareness, transport infrastructure projects started being sensitive to the environment, which preserve the geological heritage of the landscape. And we also have examples of ecoducts that connect fragmented patches of forests divided by highway projects, which provide for safe wildlife crossings. Now, transport infrastructure broadly comprises of a network of transport corridors and terminals. Traditionally, majority of the research focus has been on ecological impacts of these corridors on the landscape, whereas transport terminals themselves have gained less focus. Since both terminals and corridors are an integral part of the transport network, the ecological footprint of the terminals need to be assessed for a more holistic approach towards mitigating environmental concerns. So today, if we see in our cities, urban growth is exerting pressure on the existing transport infrastructure systems, causing saturation of carrying capacity and forcing us to look for parallel or alternate modes of transport. This often requires construction of new terminals, which are either retrofitted in existing urban fabric or they are constructed in available vacant lands in the city, which most often turn out to be the eco-sensitive areas. The impacts of transport terminals on our urban landscapes are both direct and indirect in nature. Direct impacts are the ones where the cause and effect relationship is clearly visible, whereas the indirect impacts are those where the consequences are often of the higher order and it's difficult to establish a direct relationship between the cause and effect. Direct impacts are those created by caused by construction activity like land degradation, loss of forest cover, biodiversity, changes in hydrological regime, disturbance to ecosystems, soil and water contamination, and so on. While the indirect impacts are more complex in nature, they are more long-term and have both positive and negative aspects. The biggest indirect impact of a transport terminal on a place is urbanization of hinterlands, growth of business and economic opportunities, improved accessibility to amenities, which can all put development pressure on the land. So if we see transport terminals also lead to an increase in real estate values in nearby areas, they encourage high FSI development and change in land use. All these can drive rapid urbanization and put development pressure on the land. We can observe that some of the airports are located in reclaimed portions of wetlands and river floodplains, since this is generally where the flattest land is available. Usually in such cases, floods are caused due to encroachment or diversion of rivers, as seen in case of Mumbai, Kochi or Chennai airports. Also in some cases like the Dehradun airport, expansion has caused concerns about large-scale deforestation and threat to wildlife. In case of Navi Mumbai, the ongoing construction of the international airport has led to loss of mangrove cover and mudflats due to land reclamation diversion of river and large-scale quarrying in and around the airport site to extract construction materials for the SEZ development in the airport influence zone. Since the beginning of this construction for the airport, the surrounding villages are experiencing flooding. The wetlands along the Thane Creek are part of the Central Asian Flyway for migratory birds, and hence environmentalists have highlighted the concerns of possible bird hits due to this airport activity in future. Now, by understanding the growing significance of transport terminals in shaping our urban landscapes, we'll look at the case of Navi Mumbai, which was a hinterland to the east of Mumbai and was planned on the basis of transit-oriented development. So Navi Mumbai was created with the intention to decongest Mumbai. The city was planned with 14 nodes situated along a mass transit corridor. Each node was provided with a multimodal transport terminal served by suburban railway. Since 1973, various transport projects have opened up gateways to this new city, promoting urbanization, the latest being the Nerul ferry terminal, the Atal Setu bridge, and the upcoming international airport, which are all expected to boast construction activity in this particular area. If you look at the original lay of the land, the area of Navi Mumbai comprised of uplands and lowlands consisting of salt pans, mud flats, and paddy fields. The lowlands and uplands were like fingers crisscrossing each other that allowed ingress and egress of creek water during high tide and low tide respectively. And this phenomenon was used by the locals for their livelihood and planning of settlements which were situated in the upland areas. Bund walls and timber floodgates, locally known as openers, were used to control the flow of the creek. When the development authority, SIDCO, started developing the city, delays in land acquisition forced them to develop the government-owned land. Transport terminals influenced the growth of the city towards the Thane Creek due to limited width of land in the city and the existing Parsik Hills to the east. The transport terminals improved accessibility to the city, and it led to the growth of the nodes, which brought more and more lowlands under reclamation. So berms were erected to create polders, and marshlands were reclaimed block by block and sector by sector. The land level was still below the high tide line. Holding ponds were constructed using the Dutch method to prevent flooding during high tides. Here are some of the examples of few nodes in Navi Mumbai that show how transport terminals have impacted the city's wetlands. Most notable is Node 3 in Kamote, where 2 railway stations have been constructed on the mangrove wetland area itself, and immediate surrounding land is being reclaimed for residential and commercial development. In case of Node 4 in Uran, the construction activity for the airport SEZ has already started drying up parts of the Panjay wetlands, which is one of the few remaining wetlands in the city. This construction of the new airport, the Atal Setu bridge, and the Nerul to Uran, the new railway corridor, are all expected to boost urbanization in the city, especially in the southern part of Navi Mumbai. So this city is constantly looking for alternate modes of transport to ease the future pressure on the existing systems. A new multimodal transport gateway is under construction at Belapur, consisting of a Ro-Ro ferry terminal, that is roll-on, roll-off ferry packs, and a proposed elevated railway station. This is the case example site which I've used to assess the direct and ecologically sensitive land. So if you see at the regional scale, the selected site lies at the foothills of Parsik Hills. It is situated at the mouth of Panvel Creek and a confluence of 2 rivers and multiple streams. The site is located in a wetland area dominated by mangroves and mudflats found all along the Thane Creek. The site lies close to the upcoming international airport, which is just across the creek, and it is surrounded by streams and several holding ponds in and around the site, and a mix of residential and commercial development. The cultural markers around the site comprise of the Gauthans, including the fishing villages marked in yellow in the plan, which is home to the indigenous population, that is the Kolis, and the 16th century Belapur fort situated on a hillock to the east of the site. Many Kolis, or most Kolis I would say, depend on the mangrove wetlands for the purpose of sustenance fishing activity, and they go out to fish in the creek for commercial fishing. The site is situated in the intertidal zone where mangrove forest and holding ponds act as a flood defense mechanism by holding the storm water during high tides and releasing it back into the creek during low tides. So this site is situated, since it's situated at the southern tip of Thane Creek. If you know, as we know, the Thane Creek is one of the only 3 Ramsar sites we have, recognized Ramsar sites we have in Maharashtra as of today. So this site also falls under the Thane Creek Flamingo Sanctuary, which is declared as an eco-sensitive zone and witnesses many migratory birds like the flamingos and resident birds in this area. So these mangrove wetlands in and around the site are under threat due to construction of the new transport terminal, government policies promoting high FSI build development around the terminal, project pressure of urbanization, and more importantly, lack of awareness and a bit of apathy among the citizens at large. CIDCO has proposed high FSI mixed-use development around this transport terminal project, which will reclaim the mangrove wetlands and threaten the eco-sensitive area. So it has been observed that the authorities carry out systemic land reclamation, debris dumping. Some of it is illegal, of course, and creating bunds and blocking ingress and egress of the creek water, leading to degradation of the mangrove forests over a long period of time. So there are 2 mangrove wetlands in the area adjoining the site, which are recognized and documented in the National Wetland Atlas of India. However, these wetlands today are also under threat due to illegal debris dumping and reclamation that happens. CIDCO also had a proposal for creating a golf course over here, which was a stay order was brought by the Supreme Court. Even the MMR 2036 proposal has proposed land use change in which the transport terminals and high FSI development are allowed in these coastal wetland areas. So here's a timeline mapping that shows the reclamation of wetlands in and around the site due to the transport infrastructure and housing projects from 2003 to 2021. Interestingly, the Navi Mumbai's Municipal Corporation headquarters itself, which is opposite to this selected site area, also sits in a mangrove wetland area. So today this site has degraded patches of mangroves bisected by transport corridors and housing projects. Further, the Nerul Ferry Terminal construction and the proposed elevated railway station on the site are expected to give impetus to more construction projects in this area. So these are some of the photos of the existing site conditions. Here one can see isolated water bodies and patches of mangroves, which perhaps once were all part of a connected wetland ecosystem. There is ongoing ferry terminal construction activity that has led to land degradation due to debris dumping and reclamation. The wetlands on this site could be classified as estuarine wetlands. The site is rich in floral and faunal biodiversity. It is dominated by 12 true mangrove species, 167 species of resident and migratory birds, around 45 species of fishes. The grey mangroves, or the Abyssinia marina, is the dominant species found at this particular location. This is a schematic. These are some of the photographs of the true mangrove species and mangrove associate species found in the Thane Creek. And this is a schematic diagram that shows the zonation of the mangrove species based on their altitude location from their mean sea level. With reduced salinity and pH level, the species also changes. So these mangrove wetlands on this particular site are an important natural resource and provide a host of ecological benefits. They provide multiple regulatory services like flood and storm hazard regulation, cultural services like cultural heritage and recreation, tourism, and they also have supporting services like nutrient cycling and provision of habitat. But urban development is always equated with measurable economic value. Although we may understand the importance of wetlands, but end of the day, the value of wetlands need to be established as a measurable number to convince anyone about the value of conserving these mangroves. Thus, it is necessary to ascertain the economic value of wetlands as against the value of built development in order to establish the benefits of conserving these wetlands. To understand value of wetlands, they could be classified as use values, which could be either direct, indirect, or quasi-optional values. Direct and indirect values are like revenue generated from commercial and non-commercial activities, which are tangible and easier to establish. Quasi-optional value, which talks about the expected value of a wetland in future, would be intangible and sometimes difficult to measure. The non-use value, values and sentimental value attached to the land, which are not only intangible but extremely difficult to measure and justify as well at times. So based on the global economic value of wetlands using the total economic value model as per Ramsar's studies, we can reduce the approximate figures for economic value that can be generated from activities and services already being provided by the mangroves on the site. and especially also if the mangrove wetlands are to be restored and conserved for the future generations, promote tourism and education-based activities. So we can also understand what economic value could be generated from such activities in future. For comparison, we can then establish the revenue generated by SIDCO and NMMC by leasing the land and through property taxes. At least such kind of measurable data could then set the stage for a debate or an argument in favor of restoring and conserving the wetlands as an alternative or a viable alternative to promoting hill development. Also, from a climate change point of view, the inherent value of mangrove wetlands in terms of the resilience and carbon sequestration properties is unparalleled. It can be estimated that around this particular 48 hectares of this site, mangroves, if restored, could roughly offset around 35,000 tons of CO2 emission. The mangrove wetlands are carbon sinks, and any disturbance to these lands will only probably increase carbon emissions and perhaps add to global warming. So I've looked at a few case studies. One of the Sanya Mangrove Park in China, which helps to understand mangrove restoration techniques, and a visit to the Marine Biodiversity Center in Airoli in Navi Mumbai was useful to understand the latest developments in the city regarding efforts to sensitize citizens towards mangroves and marine ecosystems. So this upcoming transport terminal is situated in an ecologically sensitive area that can encourage surrounding built development, land reclamation, and cause threat to the ecology. So here the larger design intent is to convert this threat into an opportunity by leveraging the presence of the transport terminal to restore, conserve, and promote the wetlands as an ecological and cultural resource for the city, and establish a connect to the heritage precinct of the Belapur Fort, which is almost forgotten by the citizens in general. So this is some user activity mapping on the site, which revealed that certain activities like bird watching and attract to the fort or fishing and weekly markets were already taking place in and around this site. And considering the upcoming multimodal transport project, the existing and expected users and activities were then classified into different categories, like for purpose of transit or recreation, mangrove park, or fort precinct related uses. A relationship metrics between the users and activities also help to establish the probable connections and also the strength of the connections between them. So there are various zones were identified, like transit-oriented zones and mangrove park zone, where certain activities could be combined together, like the existing activities of bird watching could be combined with the mangrove park. New trails and connections could be established to the almost forgotten Belapur Fort and the old temple precinct, and a cultural zone that celebrates the festivals of the Kolis and the flea markets, which give economic opportunities to the local community. Terminal were thought about in the proposal. The cultural celebrations and traditions of the Kolis are also deeply rooted to the mangrove wetlands in the creek ecosystem. So user and space relationship metrics was developed that gives an understanding about which users are most likely to use a particular zone, and then then design it accordingly. So the original lay of the land was studied from the 1970s satellite imagery, which reveals the extent of lowland and upland areas marked in the orange in this map. They were also marked on the existing site condition to understand the situation now. An analysis of the bathymetric data helped to mark the high tide and low tide levels on the site, and this data reveals that originally, and to a great extent even today, a significant portion of the site and surroundings are inundated with creek water during high tides. However, subsequent land reclamation over the years have altered topography, diminished the mangrove cover, and isolated brackish water bodies from the creek. So today on site one can see fragmented patches of mangroves and scrub vegetation which has replaced the mangroves in the reclaimed lands. So taking inspiration from the original lay of the land, the design concept was to create land modulation to connect the isolated water bodies and mangrove patches with the creek, and thereby help natural restoration of the mangroves by creating a continuous natural system. So here the land modulation channelizes the creek water into the park during the high tides and allows fresh water to flow into the park through the stormwater channels without hindrance. And the same land modulation also creates islands defined by the interweaving brackish water channels and depressions that retain this water during low tides and provide suitable conditions to restore the mangroves and for the mangroves to sustain. So conceptual zoning plan, which shows the various zones and the corresponding users and activities. The key idea over here is to develop a transport terminal setting within a mangrove park. At the lower level, a network of boardwalks were proposed which connect the islands separated by water channels and allow people to experience the mangrove park. And since we have a proposed elevated railway station on stilts, which could be accessed by elevated walkways starting from various points across the site, which can segregate the mass commuter footfall from the mangrove park below. So at a conceptual level, the design proposes facilities and vehicular access inside the site. A mangrove interpretation center providing learning, exhibition and research opportunities. A station plaza providing access between the elevated station and the mangrove park below. A boating jetty to support tourist activities and seaside cafes promoting local cuisine. A recreation beach that opens up otherwise desolate creek front to the city and the fort trails from the beach, which encourages people to at least visit the forgotten fort. So this is a proposed master plan for the site where the mangrove park sits right at the center and gives access to all the proposed zones and activities in and around the site. So the elevated commuter walkways pass through the tree canopies and gives glimpses of the mangrove park below. So there are certain pause points along these walkways providing resting space for the commuters. And a transit complex consisting of a pedestrian plaza that encourages walkability and physically and visually connects the fort entrance. The plaza incorporates places for waiting, meeting and spending time. This transit complex is a major gateway to the mangrove park. It provides a car-free zone for the entire site and gives access to the elevated commuter walkway connecting the railway station and the ferry terminal. So in sections, you see the colorful tensile structures in the plaza are inspired from the flight of the flamingos and they visually bind the spaces together. The entrance to the site hosts a walk-by gallery with information, displays and sculptures which raise awareness among people about the site's ecological importance. These are some more sections across the transit plaza. Just run through some of the drawings. A pause point for waiting and information before entering the mangrove park. Once inside the mangrove park, a boardwalk takes people crossing from island to another underneath the dense mangrove canopy. Some nodes along the boardwalk trail provide pause points for people to take a break. And some of the pause points have deck extensions which in a clearing which opens up view into the brackish water channels. The station deck is nestled amidst thick mangrove plantation and gives access to the elevated station above. And the facade of the station is designed so that it sort of camouflages within the foliage of the green, and the enlarged plaza decks along the station are designed to allow for easy dispersal of heavy commuter traffic. It's another section of the station plaza showing resting, waiting and play area for the kids next to the station. The boardwalk network crosses water channels to connect the various islands. Some more sections inside the mangrove park. Here, interestingly, one of the boardwalk trails connects to the boating plaza and jetty along the creek with recreational boat rides. Scrap boats were found on the site, which are repurposed as cafes and restaurants promoting local cuisine. Decks are provided for, and the sand mounds on the beach with coconut trees becomes a children's play area. There are some of the sections of the children's play area along the beach and the jetty along the creek. So the boardwalk along the creek connects to the nearby Diwali fishing village and passes through coconut groves which witness coolies celebrating Diwali by lighting fireworks on their boat. This is a typical way the coolies of this particular village celebrate Diwali. There are some sections of the trail that connects the site to the Belapur Fort Precinct. So the restoration of the mangroves in this particular case could help in protecting the city from storm surges and flooding, purifying storm water runoff, restoring species habitat and natural systems, shoreline stabilization, carbon sequestration, promote small-scale fishing for local villages and also generate revenue for the city at large. So this proposal was done with the hope to bring about a change in the outlook and perception of people and authorities towards landscape approach for transport terminal projects situated in ecologically sensitive sites. So with this also I've come to the end of the presentation of the project, but before I end I would like to briefly mention about this mangrove board game which was developed. It was designed during my postgrad studies and as part of a vertical studio for interpreting mangrove forests. This board game was designed and then it was used by children from the Godrej school in Mumbai during their annual science fair. And it is primarily designed to spread awareness among children about the environmental importance of mangrove wetlands. So each positive attribute of a mangrove wetland. So the gameplay is basically more like a snake and ladder. So you have play cards to help you what you need to do. So each positive as attribute you gain points and you move ahead, and a negative impact that is happening on our mangrove ecosystem in the city, you lose points and then you come back a few steps. So taking this idea ahead, I've patented a set of series of board games based on various ecosystems like wetlands, rivers, grasslands, deserts, etc. This series of board games are basically, the intention is to spread awareness among children about the positive attributes of each of these ecosystems, their importance and the threats that they face today. And these prototypes are currently under development. The patent has been published. I would like to leave all of you with this beautiful expression of thought and a painting. Thank you for hearing out to the mangrove so patiently. Thank you.